I don't even know where to start, so I'm just going to write it the way it feels in my head. Messy, out of order, too honest. The truth is, I think my partner might be in love with someone else, and I don't know if I'm being paranoid or if I've just been ignoring what's right in front of me for months. Eli and I have been together for 9 years. We met when I was 22 and he was 24, at this terrible house party in Cambridge where everyone was either drunk or pretending to be more interesting than they were. He made a joke about the chips being existentially stale, which sounds dumb when I write it out, but it made me laugh in this real way I hadn't laughed in weeks. We ended up outside on the porch, sitting on overturned milk crates, talking until the sun started coming up. I remember thinking that night that if we ever broke up, I'd never be able to listen to that stupid early morning bird song again without crying. We moved in together a year later. It wasn't romantic, just practical. My lease was ending, his roommate was moving out, and it felt natural. That's always been how we've been, nothing dramatic, just gradual. We grew into each other's space like ivy creeping up the same wall. I guess that's why I didn't notice the distance at first. Because love, when it's that long, doesn't disappear overnight. It recedes quietly, like a tide pulling back so slowly you don't realize the water's gone until you're standing in mud. It started small. He began working late more often. At first, I didn't think much of it. He's a software engineer and his company's been doing a big product launch. I'd ask him how it was going and he'd smile in this distracted way and say, "Stressful but good." I'd kiss his shoulder and go back to whatever I was doing, emails, dinner, scrolling. That's the kind of couple we were. Comfortable silence, shared space, separate screens. Then he stopped talking about work at all, which sounds innocent, but it wasn't like him. He used to tell me everything, the annoying client who changed requirements mid-sprint, the bug that haunted him for 3 days, the coworker who made everyone laugh in Slack. Then one day that stopped. I'd ask, "How was your day?" And he'd shrug. "Fine." The way people do when they're hiding the parts they know would make you ask more questions. Around the same time, he started wearing cologne again. Not the same one he used to wear when we first met, that spicy cedar one I used to love, but something lighter, more expensive smelling. I noticed it one morning when he leaned over me to grab his laptop. I said, "You smell nice." And he said, "Oh, just something Maya recommended." I didn't think anything of it then. I hadn't met her yet. Maya was just a name, a colleague, a non-event. God, if I'd known what that name would come to mean. I met her for the first time 2 months later at Eli's company's summer barbecue. She was smaller than I expected, short, with curly hair that looked like it never stayed where she put it. She laughed too loud, in this contagious, self-assured way that made people want to look at her. She wasn't conventionally beautiful, not in that intimidating, model kind of way, but she had that magnetic thing, the kind of energy that makes people lean in. And Eli leaned in. I saw it before I could stop myself from seeing it. When he introduced us, he looked nervous, which was strange. He said, "This is Maya, the one I told you about." And I remember thinking, told me about when? Because he hadn't. I smiled anyway. "Nice to meet you." She said something like, "Finally, he talks about you all the time." I didn't know if that was true or if it was the kind of thing people say out of politeness, but I felt the words catch on something in my chest. That night, I lay awake while Eli slept next to me, his arm draped loosely over my waist. I could smell her perfume on his shirt, that faint floral note that lingered from the barbecue. I told myself I was imagining it, that it was just summer air and sweat and charcoal smoke. But deep down, something inside me went quiet in that way it does when it recognizes danger. After that, I started noticing more. Not dramatic things, small, stupid things. He changed his phone password. He took calls on the balcony. He smiled at his screen more. Once, while folding laundry, I found a receipt in his jeans pocket from a cafe we'd never been to. 2 lattes, 1 croissant. Midday. I stared at the date and time, 12:47 p.m., a Thursday. He told me he was in back-to-back meetings that day. I told Claire about it. She's my best friend and she's not subtle. She said, "Nora, that's weird." I said, "I know, but it's probably nothing." She raised an eyebrow. "Nothing looks a lot like something." I wanted to believe her, but I also didn't want to be that person, the paranoid girlfriend digging through clues like some Reddit detective. I hated those posts. "My boyfriend liked a girl's photo from 2017. Is he cheating?" I used to roll my eyes at them. Now I was living one, and it didn't feel ridiculous anymore. It felt like drowning in your own doubt. I tried to bring it up once. We were eating dinner, pasta, wine, normal. I said as casually as I could, "You've been working late a lot lately. Everything okay?" He nodded, took a sip of wine, said, "Yeah, just deadlines." And then he changed the subject. It wasn't what he said, it was how fast he moved away from the topic, like it was a hot stove. I told myself to let it go. People get busy. Relationships ebb and flow. Don't be dramatic, Nora. Don't be that person. But you can only gaslight yourself for so long. The night I found the message, I wasn't even snooping. He'd left his laptop open on the coffee table while he went to shower. I was watching a show, half paying attention, when a Slack notification popped up in the corner of the screen. It said, "Maya, I can't stop thinking about last night." I don't remember standing up, but I must have, because suddenly I was holding the laptop. My heart was so loud I could hear it in my throat. My first thought wasn't even betrayal, it was relief. Because finally, it wasn't just in my head. Finally, there was something real. The message disappeared after a few seconds, deleted, maybe, or buried under others. I clicked the Slack icon, but it asked for a password. I sat there shaking, trying to decide if I should confront him or pretend I hadn't seen it. He came out of the shower humming, towel around his waist, hair wet. I looked at him and felt like I was looking at a stranger who was pretending to be someone I loved. I didn't say anything that night, or the next. I just started watching more carefully. The way he smiled when his phone buzzed, the way he checked his reflection before work, the new shirt I'd never seen before. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Eventually, I did confront him. It was a Sunday afternoon, gray and humid. The kind of day where everything feels suspended. I said, "Are you sleeping with her?" Just like that, no preamble. He froze halfway through loading the dishwasher and said, "What, who?" His voice cracked slightly, just enough that I knew. "Maya," I said. He didn't answer right away. Then he said quietly, "It's not what you think," which is what people say when it's exactly what you think. I think that's enough for now. I'm shaking even writing this. I stared at him for a long second after he said it. "It's not what you think." The words just hung there between us, flimsy and useless. The dishwasher hummed behind him. A single plate clinked as the water started to spray. It was such a normal sound for such an abnormal moment that my brain couldn't decide which reality to stay in. I wanted to ask him 1,000 questions and also none at all. "What do I think it is then?" I finally said. My voice didn't sound like mine. It came out small, almost polite. He rubbed the back of his neck and didn't look at me. "It's complicated," he said. "Complicated," I repeated. "That's what people say about taxes and plumbing, not about lying to someone they live with." He looked up finally. His eyes were tired, ringed with red like he hadn't slept in days. "I didn't mean for it to happen," he said. She was easy to talk to, work's been." "Don't," I said. "Don't make this about work." He shut his mouth, jaw working like he wanted to bite back the next excuse. We stood there like that for a minute, both breathing too loudly. I could feel the heat rising up my neck, that dizzy feeling that comes before either tears or shouting. "Did you sleep with her?" I asked. He hesitated. That half-second told me everything. When he finally said, "Yes," it was so quiet I almost missed it. I thought I would scream. I thought I would throw something or cry or run, but instead I just nodded. My body felt like it had been filled with sand, heavy, slow sinking. "How long?" "About a month." A month, 30 days of lying, 30 nights of pretending to be here when he was. I sat down on one of the kitchen chairs because my legs didn't trust me anymore. "Why?" I asked. It came out flat, like the word had been drained of meaning. He sat too, across from me, elbows on his knees. "I don't know," he said. "I really don't. It wasn't about you. She made me feel different, lighter." That word, lighter, hit me like a slap, as if I'd been the weight all along. I wanted to ask him what lighter meant, whether I'd been too heavy with my love or my worry or my need to talk about things. But all I managed was a small, "Okay." It came out automatic, like a reflex, the same okay I used. He said my name quietly, "Nora," and reached for my hand. I pulled it back. For a second he looked like he might cry, which almost made me laugh. Because that was always how it worked with Eli. He hurt people and then looked heartbroken. I stood up and started gathering random things. My phone, a sweater, my keys. I didn't know where I was going. I just needed to be in air that wasn't. "Can we please talk?" he said. "We are talking," I said. "You're just not saying anything thaw." When I got to the door, he said, "I didn't want to lose you." That was what stopped me for half a second. I turned back. "You did," I said, and outside, the sky was that washed-out gray that never decides whether to rain or clear up. I walked without direction, just letting my body move so my brain wouldn't have to. At one point, I ended up in front of the small park near our old apartment. There was a family having a picnic, 2 kids chasing a soccer ball. The normalness of it almost broke me more than anything Eli had said. I texted Claire. He, where are you? I'm common." She found me 20 minutes later sitting on the edge of the fountain, staring at the water. She didn't ask questions right away, just sat down beside me and handed me a coffee. I hadn't realized how cold I'd gotten until I felt the warmth in my hands. "What happened?" she asked after a while. I told her the bare version, the message, the confrontation, the confession. She listened the way she always does, quiet but focused, no interruptions. When I finished, she let out a low, sharp breath. "What an idiot," she said. I nodded. That was one word for it. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "I don't know." The words felt like gravel in my mouth. "I can't think past today." "That's fine," she said. "You don't have to." For the next hour, we just sat there. I watched strangers pass, couples holding hands, dogs tugging leashes, people existing in lives that didn't feel like mine anymore. Everything had split into 2 timelines, before and after. When I finally went home, it was dark. The lights were on in the living room, and Eli was sitting on the couch, head in his hands. He looked up when I came in. "I didn't know if you'd come back." "I live here," I said. He nodded like that made sense. For a few minutes, neither of us spoke. I could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. He finally said, "I ended it with her." "When?" "Tonight. I told her it was a mistake." I almost laughed again. "You told her it was a mistake. That must have made her feel great." "It was a mistake," he said. You just what?" He swallowed. I didn't know how far gone we were until it happened. "Until you cheated," I said. He flinched at the word. I didn't stop saying it. "That's what it was, Eli. Not an accident, not a mistake, a choice." He rubbed his eyes. "I know." For a while we just sat there, both silent. There was a photo on the wall of us from a trip years ago, smiling at the camera, sunburned and happy. I couldn't look at it anymore. "I think I'm going to stay at Claire's for a few days," I said. He nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the floor. "Okay." When I went to the bedroom to pack a bag, the air felt different. Everything looked the same, the bed, the books, the small plant on the windowsill, but it was like the meaning had been stripped away. I folded clothes without really seeing them. He stood in the doorway while I zipped the suitcase. "I'm sorry," he said. "I know," I said. "You should be." I didn't look back when I left. Over the next few weeks, I stayed on Claire's couch. The first few days were a fog. I woke up, drank the coffee she left by the kettle, went for long walks, came back exhausted and still couldn't sleep. People talk about heartbreak like it's fire, but it is. It's water. It fills every space, gets into the cracks, and you can't breathe until you teach yourself again. Eli texted a few times. The messages started formal. "I hope you're okay." One night, Claire said, "You don't have to decide if you'll forgive him. You just have to decide what kind of life you want next." That stuck with me. I kept rolling it around in my head like a stone, smooth. I went back to the apartment 2 weeks later, not to move back in, just to collect the last of my things. It smelled faintly of the lavender detergent I used, and something else underneath, that empty, unused air that places get when they've stopped being lived in together. Eli was there. We talked quietly, like 2 people in a library. He said, "I'm sorry for everything." There wasn't a big speech or a dramatic moment. Just 2 people realizing the story had run its course. I left the keys on the counter and walked out. The air outside was cold and sharp, and for the first time in months, I felt like I could actually feel my lungs. I didn't post about it online. I didn't turn it into a lesson or a warning. It was just a thing that happened, awful, human, ordinary. Sometimes people love each other and still ruin it. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is stop pretending you don't see what's right in front of you. And in a quiet way, that's what healing looked like for me. Not forgiveness, not forgetting, just the slow, steady act of walking forward, one honest step. A month after I left, I found a small apartment on the other side of town. It wasn't much, one bedroom, thin walls, a view of the alley, but it was mine. The first night I slept there, the quiet was so deep it felt like another person in the room. I kept expecting to hear his footsteps in the hallway, the clink of his mug, the soft hum he made when he read. The silence pressed against me until I finally opened the window and let the city noise in. Cars, voices, a dog barking somewhere. It was messy and alive, and it reminded me I was still here. I started running again. At first I could only manage a few blocks before my lungs gave out, but every morning I went a little farther. I liked the feeling of my body remembering how to move forward. Work got better too. I took on new clients, said yes to things I used to talk myself out of. There were still bad days, days when I caught myself checking my phone for messages that weren't coming, but the spaces between them got longer. Eli emailed once more. He said he'd started therapy, that he hoped I was okay. I wrote back a short reply, I hope you are too. It wasn't forgiveness exactly, but it was peace enough for both of us. Claire and I went out one night for drinks, the first proper night out I'd had since everything happened. She raised her glass and said, "To new chapters." I laughed, rolled my eyes a little, but it felt good to toast to something that wasn't loss. On the way home, I realized I hadn't thought about him once in hours. Sometimes I still think about that first night we met, how easy it had been to fall into something that felt like forever. But now, when I remember it, there isn't bitterness anymore. Just the quiet understanding that people change, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let tea. Life didn't become a movie montage of independence. It was smaller, quieter, full of trial and error, overwatered plants, late rent payments, too much takeout. But every morning when I woke up and opened the curtains, I felt that same thin slice of light across the floor, and it felt like a beginning. Not the one I'd planned, maybe, but one that finally belonged to me.